Mastering Metrics: The Path from Cause to Effect, a book written by Joshua D. Angrist and Jorn Stephen. Introduction. Blind Master Po. Close your eyes. What do you hear? John Y. Chang Kane. I hear the water. I hear the birds. Master Po. Do you hear your own heartbeat? Y. Chang Kane. No. Master Po. Do you hear the grasshopper that is at your feet? Y. Chang Kane. Old man, how is it that you hear these things? Master Po. Young man, how is it that you do not? Kung Fu Pilot. Economics. Reputation for dismality is a bad rap. Economics is as exciting as any science can be. The world is our lab, and the many diverse people in it are our subjects. The excitement in our work comes from the opportunity to learn about cause and effect in human affairs. The big question of the day are our questions. Will loose monetary policy spark economic growth or just fan the fires of inflation? Iowa farmers and the Federal Reserve Chair want to know. Will mandatory health insurance really make Americans healthier? Such policy kindling lights the fires of talk radio. We approach these questions coolly, however, armed not with passion but with data. Economists' use of data to answer cause and effect questions constitute the field of applied econometrics, known to students and masters alike as metrics. The tools of the metrics trade are disciplined data analysis, paired with the machinery of statistical inference. There is a mystical aspect to our work as well. We are after the truth, but truth is not revealed in full, as the messages the data transmit requires interpretation. In this spirit, we draw inspiration from the journey of Y. Chang Kane, hero of the classic Kung Fu TV series. Kane, a mixed-race Shaolin monk, wanders in search of his US-born half-brother in the 19th century American West. As he searches, Kane questions all he sees in human affairs, uncovering hidden relationship and deeper meanings. Like Kane's journey, the way of metrics is illuminated by questions. Other things equal. In a disturbing development, you may have heard of the proportion of American college students completing their degrees in a timely fashion has taken a sharp turn south. Politicians and policy analysts blame failing college graduation rates on a pernicious combinations of tuition hikes and the large student loans many students use to finance their studies. Perhaps increased student borrowing derails some who would otherwise stay on track. The fact that the students most likely to drop out of a school often shoulder large student loans would seem to substantiate this hypothesis. You would rather pay for a school with inherited riches than borrowed money if you can. As we will discuss in detail, however, education probably boosts earnings enough to make loan repayment bearable for most graduates. How then should we interpret the negative correlation between debt burden and college graduation rates? Does indebtedness cause debtors to drop out? The first question to ask in this context is who borrows the most? Students who borrow heavily typically come from middle and lower income families, since richer families have more savings. For many reasons, students from lower income families are less likely to complete a degree than those from higher income families. Regardless of whether they've borrowed heavily, we should therefore be skeptical of claims that high debt burdens cause lower college completion rates when these claims are based solely on comparisons of completion rates between those with more or less debt. By virtue of the correlation between family background and college debt, the contrast in graduation rates between those with and without student loans is not an other thing equal comparison. As college students majoring in economics, we first learn the other things equal idea by its Latin name, ceteris paribus. Comparisons made under ceteris paribus conditions have a causal interpretation. Imagine two students, identical in every way. So their families have the same financial resources, and their parents are similarly educated. One of these virtual twins finances college by borrowing and the other from savings. Because they are otherwise equal in every way, their grandmother has treated both to a small nest egg. Differences in their educational attainment can be attributed to the fact that only one has borrowed. To this day, we wonder why so many economics students first encounter this central idea in Latin. Maybe it's a conspiracy to keep them from thinking about it. Because as this hypothetical comparison suggests, real other things equal comparisons are hard to engineer. Some would even say impossible. That's Italian, not Latin, but at least people still speak it. Hard to engineer, maybe, but not easily impossible. The metrics craft uses data to get to other things equal in spite of the obstacles, called selection bias or omitted variables bias, found on the path running from raw numbers to reliable causal knowledge. The path to causal understanding is rough and shadowed as it snakes around the boulders of selection bias. And yet, masters of metrics walk with path with confidence as well as humility, successfully linking cause and effect. Our first line of attack of the causality problem is a randomized experiment, often called a randomized trial. In a randomized trial, researchers change the causal variables of interest, say the availability of college financial aid, for a group selected using something like a coin toss. By changing circumstances randomly, we make it highly likely that the variable of interest is unrelated to the many other factors determining the outcomes we mean to study. Random assignment isn't the same as holding everything else fixed, but it has the same effect. Random manipulation makes other things equal hold on average across the groups that did and did not experience manipulation. As we explained in Chapter 1, on average is usually good enough. Randomized trials take pride of place in our metrics toolkit. Alas, randomized social experiments are expensive to field and may be slow to bear fruit, while research funds are scarce and life is short. Often, therefore, masters of metrics turn to less powerful but more accessible research designs. Even when we can't practically randomize, however, we still dream of the trial we would like to do. The notion of an ideal experiment disciplines our approach to economic metric research. Mastering metrics shows how wise application of our 5 favorite economic tools bring us as close as possible to the causality revealing power of a real experiment. Our favorite econometric tools are illustrated here through a series of well-crafted and important econometrics studies. Vetted and Grandmaster Away of Kung Fu Panda's Jade Palace, these investigations of causal effects are distinguished by their awesomeness. The methods they use, random assignment, regression, instrumental variables, regression discontinuity designs, and differences in differences, are the furious five of econometric research. For starters, motivated by the contemporary American debate over health care, the first chapter describes two social experiments that reveal whether, as many policymakers believe, health insurance indeed helps those who have it stayed healthy. Chapters 2 to 5 put our other tools to work, crafting answers to important questions ranging from the benefits of attending private colleges and selective high schools to the costs of teen drinking and the effects of central bank injections of liquidity. Our final chapter puts the Furious Five to the test by returning to the education arena. On average, college graduates earn about twice as much as high school graduates, an earnings gap that only seems to be growing. Chapter 6 asks whether this gap is evidence of a large causal return to schooling or merely a reflection of the many other advantages those with more education might have, such as more educated parents. Can the relationship between schooling and earnings ever be evaluated on a ceteris paribus basis? Or must the boulders of selection bias forever block our way? The challenge of quantifying the causal link between schooling and earnings provides a gripping test match for metrics tools and the masters who wield them. Chapter 1: Randomized Trials. Why Chan Kane? What happens in a man's life is already written. A man must move through life as his destiny wills. Old men, yet each is free to live as he chooses. Though they seem opposite, both are true. Kung Fu Pilot. Our path. Our path begins with experimental random assignment, both as a framework for causal questions and a benchmark by which the results from other methods are judged. We illustrate the awesome power of random assignment through two randomized evaluations of the effects of health insurance. The appendix of this chapter also uses the experimental framework to review the concepts and methods of statistical inference. 1.1 In sickness and in health insurance. The Affordable Care Act (ACA) in parentheses has proven to be one of the most controversial and interesting policy innovations we have seen. The ACA requires Americans to buy health insurance with a tax penalty for those who don't voluntarily buy in. The question of the proper role of government in the market for health care has many angles. One is the causal effect on health insurance on health. The United States spends more of its GDP on health care than do other developed nations. Yet, Americans are surprisingly unhealthy. For example, Americans are more likely to be overweight and die sooner than their Canadian cousins, who spend only about 2/3 as much on care. America is also unusual among developed countries in having no universal health insurance scheme. Perhaps there is a causal connection here. Elderly Americans are covered by a federal program called Medicare, while some poor Americans, including most single mothers, their children, and many other poor children, are covered by Medicaid. Many of the working prime-age poor, however, have long been uninsured. In fact, many uninsured Americans have chosen not to participate in an employer-provided insurance plan. These workers, perhaps correctly, count on hospital emergency departments, which cannot turn them away, to address their health care needs. But the emergency department might not be the best place to treat, say, the flu, or to manage chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension that are so pervasive among poor Americans. The emergency department is not required to provide long-term care. It, therefore, stands to reason that government-mandated health insurance might yield a health dividend. The push for subsidized universal health insurance stems in part from the belief that it does. The ceteris paribus question in this context contrasts the health of someone with insurance coverage to the health of the same person were they without insurance, other than an emergency department backstop. This contrast highlights a fundamental empirical conundrum. People are either insured or not. We don't get to see them both ways, at least not at the same time in exactly the same circumstances. In his celebrated poem The Road Not Taken, Robert Frost used the metaphor of crossed roads to describe the causal effects of personal choice. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. And sorry, I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Frost's traveler concludes, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The traveler claims his choice has mattered, but being only one person, he can't be sure. A later trip or a report by other travelers won't nail it down for him either. Our narrator might be older and wiser the second time around, while other travelers might have different experiences on the same road. So it is with any choice, including those related to health insurance. Would uninsured men with heart disease be disease-free if they had insurance? In the novel Light Years, James Salter's irresolute narrator observes, ads demolish their alternatives. That is the paradox. We can't know what lies at the end of the road not taken. We can't know, but evidence can be brought to bear on the question. This chapter takes you through some of the evidence related to paths involving health insurance. The starting point is the National Health Interview Survey, NHIS, an annual survey of the U.S. population with detailed information on health and health insurance. Among many other things, the NHIS asks, would you say your health in general is excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor? We used this question to code an index that assigns 5 to excellent health and 1 to poor health. In a sample of Marriott 2009 NHIS respondents who may or may not be insured. This index is our outcome. A measure we're interested in studying. The causal relation of interest here is determined by a variable that indicates coverage by private health insurance. We call this variable the treatment. Sorry. Borrowing from the literature of medical trials, although the treatments we are interested in need not be medical treatments like drugs or surgery. In this context, those with insurance can be thought of as the treatment group. Those without insurance make up the comparison or control group. A good control group reveals the fate of the treated in a counterfactual world where they are not treated. The first row of table 1.1 compares the average health index of insured and uninsured Americans, with statistics tabulated separately for husbands and wives. Those with health insurance are indeed healthier than those without, a gap of about 0.3 in the index for men and 0.4 in the index for women. These are large differences when measured against the standard deviation of the health index, which is about 1. In parentheses, standard deviations reported in square brackets in table 1.1 measure variability in data. The chapter appendix reviews the relevant formula. These large gaps might be the health dividend we are looking for. Fruitless and fruitful comparisons. Simple comparisons such as those at the top of table 1.1 are often cited as evidence of causal effects. More often than not, however, such comparisons are misleading. Once again, the problem is other things equal, or lack thereof. Comparisons of people with and without health insurance are not apples to apples. Such contrasts are apples to oranges, or worse. Among other differences, those with health insurance are better educated, have higher income, and are more likely to be working than the uninsured. This can be seen in panel B of table 1.1, which reports the average characteristics of NHIS respondents who do not and don't have health insurance. Many of the differences in the table are large. For example, a nearly 3-year schooling gap. Most are statistically precise enough to rule out the hypothesis that these discrepancies are merely chance findings. In parentheses, see the chapter appendix for a refresher on statistical significance. It won't surprise you to learn that most variables tabulated here are highly correlated with health as well as with health insurance status. More educated people, for example, tend to be healthier, as well as being overrepresented in the insured group. This may be because more educated people exercise more, smoke less, and are more likely to wear seat belts. It stands to reason that the difference in health between insured and uninsured NHIS respondents at least partly reflects the extra schooling of the insured. Table 1.1. Okay, there's a table. I will take a screenshot and put this in the video. Table 1.1, health and demographic characteristic of insured and uninsured couples in the NHIS. Our effort to understand the causal connection between insurance and health is aided by fleshing our Frost's two roads metaphor. We use the letter Y as shorthand for health, the outcome variable of interest. Sorry. To make it clear, when we are talking about specific people, we use subscripts as a stand-in for names. Colon Y I is the health of individual. I, the outcome. YI is recorded in our data. But facing the choice of whether to pay for health insurance, person I has two potential outcomes, only one of which is observed. To distinguish one potential outcome from another, we add a second subscript. The road taken without health insurance leads to Y 0I. Oh, sorry, I need to charge the computer. One moment, please. Okay, I was here. The road taken without health insurance leads to Y0I for person I, while the road with health insurance leads to Y1I for person I. Potential outcomes lie at the end of each road one may take. The causal effect of insurance on health is the difference between them, written Y 1I dash Y 0I. To nail this down further, consider the story of visiting Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Student Sudhar Kalat recently arrived from Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has a national health insurance system that covers all its citizens automatically. Though you wouldn't go there just for health insurance. Arriving in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Sudhar is surprised to learn that MIT students must decide whether to opt in to the university's health insurance plan, for which MIT levies for hefty fee. Upon reflection, Sudhar judges the MIT insurance worth paying for, since he fears upper respiratory infections in chilly New England. Let's say that Y0I equals 3 and Y1I equals 4. For I equals Sudhar. For him, the causal effect on insurance is one step up to the NHIS scale. Y1, comma, Sudhar dash Y0 Sudhar equals 1. Table 1.2 summarizes this information. Table 1.2. Outcomes, the treatments for Sudhar and Maria. Okay, there is a comparison between a table. Okay, I mean there is a table where it compares the potential outcome without insurance, Y0I, where Kasudar Catald has 3 and Maria Moreno has 5. Potential outcome with insurance, Y1I, 45. Treatment insurance status chosen, 10. Okay, this is the weird information. I will put an image of this in the video. Actual health outcome, YI 45. Treatment effects. It's worth emphasizing that table 1.2 is an imaginary table. Some of the information it describes must remain hidden. Kasudar will either buy insurance, revealing his value of Y1I, or he won't, in which case his Y0I is revealed. Kasudar has walked many a long and dusty road in Kazakhstan, but even he cannot be sure what lies at the end of those not taken. Maria Moreno is also coming to MIT this year. She hails from Chile's Andean highlands. Little concerned by Boston winters, Herty Maria is not the type to fall sick easily. She therefore passes up the MIT insurance, planning to use her money for travel instead. Because Maria has Y0 Maria equals Y1 Maria equals 5, the causal effect of insurance on her health is Y1 Maria minus Y0 Maria equals 0. Maria numbers likewise appears in table 1.2. Since Kasudar and Maria make different insurance choices, they offer an interesting comparison. Kasudar health is Y Kasudar equals Y1 Kasudar equals 4, while Maria's is Y Maria equals Y0 Maria equals 5. The difference between them is Y Kasudar minus Y Maria equals minus 1. Taken at face value, this quantity which we observe suggests Kasudar's decision to buy insurance is counterproductive. His MIT insurance coverage notwithstanding, insured Kasudar's health is worse than insured Maria's. In fact, the comparison between frail Kasudar and Herty Maria tells us little about the causal effects of their choices. This can be seen by linking observed and potential outcomes as follows. Okay, I will put this image in the video. Well, 50 minutes has passed. I hope that you liked this audiobook. If you did, please give a like to this video, and I will upload the second part. Please donate to my PayPal. Uh, Thank you.